Risser. I am a tutor rating specialist, so a couple more classes in there at the Janus School in Shuey. The Janus School is a small private school for children with learning differences, dyslexia being one of them. This is my 20th year at the school. I graduated from high school twice, so it's nice to be back. Okay, I lost my
All right, no worries. All right, so I've been sitting, so I'm amping up for this. So this is my 4th year at the Janus School, and I absolutely love working there. It's a great school, and I feel like I don't know, just like being here today, hearing from dyslexic students and hearing from parents and everything, I feel like I'm really excited to work there. So just a plug there. So before working at Janus, I worked in Maryland at the Odyssey School, which is a school for dyslexic students, and I absolutely loved it as well. And prior to that, I taught in public school, 3rd grade for 2 years, so I kind of have a mixture of public and private atmosphere, so I can kind of, not in Pennsylvania, but I can sense, all different areas of public and private. And I graduated in 2012 from Stevenson University in Maryland. So, yes. All right, we're gonna try this. And as I was doing this, I was thinking, this could be a possible potential study method or something teachers could use in their classroom. Has anyone used Poll Everywhere before? Yeah, okay. So this is my first time, I'm gonna be honest, trying it out. But if you get out your phones, if you would like to participate, we just have some questions, and you text Katie, Shuey, all caps, my name, 713, and then so the 2 is 22333. And then you follow these directions. So it'll text you a link that says polleverywhere.com. You click get started. Scroll down to join the presentation. And then type Katie Shuey lowercase 713 in a bar. Press join. And you should be able to start the survey. Is this thumbs up? Is this like working-ish?
Yeah.
I'll slow down. I'm excited.
Oh, Emily in the back. Hi.
Hi. Okay.
Hey.
Yes? Okay.
Emily, apparently our one-pager isn't working.
Really? I just went in and should changed it. I'll double check.
Just since you finished presenting?
Yeah.
Okay, it was before you finished
Okay.
presenting.
Okay, so let me know if it still doesn't.
That's like who you're sending it to.
Yes.
And Katie Shuey 713 is the message.
So
Katie 713 is the message.
You're sending it to, yeah.
So cancel that.
Yeah, that's I will take that. Text what? I guess, yeah. Yes. Now if you scroll, there should be a start survey. Yep, and then you click the link and then you should be able to participate.
Double tap.
Like I said, we're trying to. Now scroll down.
You someday, you learned that.
Get started. Did it work? And then
This was the last time that you did.
All right, hold on. What if we do it Yeah.
Okay.
5 surveys done. Someone's doing it. We did it. Yay!
Yeah, I don't know. This was Katie's thing.
We're just going to interact. right, well, you know what?
So take it mind by attitude.
Now it's saying that's what I was telling.
All right, well, let's do this now in fashion.
Okay, well, you know what? This is a perfect example of how to teach students with learning differences. Is you have to be flexible and move on, and if something's not working, you move on. So we're going to hold off on this, but the questions were, what grades do you teach? Do you teach phonics? If so, how comfortable do you feel? And what were you hoping to get out of this presentation? So why don't you just pick a couple people and we'll just...
Or how about this? Where do we have a lot of primary teachers? Okay, intermediate? Middle school? High school? Parents? All of the above?
Okay. So we'll work on the pull everywhere thing. I'll talk to you. I was trying to be in here. All right. Well,
Wait, I have a disclaimer. If you were here for the session in this room right before, you were going to see a lot of overlap because it's still OG surprise. It's just maybe a little over.
so some of the things we're going to talk about are sounds and words, syllables, prefixes and suffixes, spelling, and then some different resources that we use. And one of the big things that I like to put into teaching and that I've noticed working with students with learning disabilities especially is that multisensory type of learning that they were talking about earlier, and that I know some of you saw in the last thing. I'm very hands-on, very project-based, so you'll see a lot of crazy things going on. But I was literally going to bed thinking about this morning because I'm going to be talking to you about a rat that my kids made with the 3D printer. But there is a connection, and this is meaningful. And I will get there. But I think just especially students that struggle with dyslexia, dysgraphia, whatever, you have to make the learning meaningful. That's kind of my little thing is, and my students will remember making this purple rat and the poem they wrote about it to help them learn CDC and CDCE words. So we'll get there, but that's my little thing.
Okay, so sorry for those of you that were here in the last session. This is where it gets a little repetitive. So our basic phonics routine, whether you're in elementary or all the way up to high school, for our students that need this level of support or help with spelling and decoding and all of those things, we do use the same trays even at the high school level. Now my high schoolers will act like they're too cool, but I often have to tell them to stop playing in the sandbox and write the letters that I'm asking because they love it. I have to give them time to doodle in the sand before they can focus. But they do like the sand trays. That tactile feeling of the sand as they write it is just another way to help them.
And I want to say one thing about, I don't know if any of the Millersville students are in here, but I was in their session, in the first session, and one of the things that Sarah had said was the tactile learning is that's the difference in, programs like Orton Gillingham and some other programs is the physical, of making the sounds in the sand and things like that. So
you can see in the pictures, the one on the bottom right, if you see an A-E, that's how we show the silent E way to spell the long A sound. And the one beside that, you see the hand writing the ED sound. Katie has some of the different colors, Sam. I think somebody was asking me about is it all just black and gray or no? There's different colors.
I had students bring in their own stand, and then they really like to use that particular tray and then share it with others.
So the stand trace is the same. So at the high school level, we've learned so far 4 different ways to spell the long sound A. A-E, A-I, A-Y. So when we do this in the tray, I'll say you now learn 4 ways to spell the sound A. So they make a big plus, and they write the 4 different ways in the sand tray. More than that gets a little tricky. They stop dividing at that point and just write them in. We've learned 5 ways to spell the sound E so far. So they don't divide it, they just write the 5 in. And then we share that out verbally. So again, they're hearing it, they're touching the sound, they're saying it. I'm trying to get the different senses.
And we really make sure that they understand to start with the left hand because we read
Hold
from.
on. You don't have to pound and tap.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. We were in the stand. So
Got
in
it.
the stand, we do the sounds, the different
Right.
ways to spell
Yes.
different sounds. But then when we move from practicing sounds in the sand tray, then we move to writing words, whether it be on whiteboards or on paper, the big whiteboard in the room. Choose your weapon of choice here. We do the pound and tap so that we hear the syllables and the individual sounds in the words. Go ahead.
So I would do it like on the board and they do it at their seats or in their laps. And making sure we start from left to right that way because we read from left to right. And, they they'd be like, why? And then I explain it, especially to the older ones. And so, like if we had vote, we go vote, vote. And then what I do to even help break it down more, because we've heard today that especially, just students that have dyslexia, other learning differences, they need things broken down. So I create a list, and every time we do our routine in the classroom, we write down, okay, we're going to pound and tap with our hand, and then we draw the lines. And if they might need a visual. Some students might even have this on their desk or posted in the classroom or something like that.
To use for pound and tap.
And so then we would write the amount of lines based on how many sounds you hear. So vote, so we would do 3 lines, and then they would do that on their whiteboard. Some of you, this is probably repetition from the last one.
It's okay, it's good practice.
Yeah, and then
Repetition is the key.
yep, and then throughout the week, maybe if I'm working on the same sound, I might not even put the lines up on the board. I might kind of let them determine and walk around and do an every pupil response type thing to see if they are even understanding the amount of sounds in the words.
And depending on the level of your students, both my high school groups, they've been at our school for a while, most of them. So they don't need that. They just kind of do that and they can write it. If I see they're struggling, we'll go back to that. But you can start there so they can visually see the 3 sounds with their fingers and then 3 when they write it, the 3 lines, okay, I need the letters for each of these pieces. But depending on your students, you wouldn't have to. So my high school groups, they don't need that at this point. They can do it without. But we do bring it back in when it gets tricky. Okay, more repetition. Red word spelling. So most of the words that we do in our weekly lessons, in the sand trays and on the whiteboards, the pound and tap, are what we call green words. They're the words that, for the most part, follow the rules. The red words are all the words that don't follow the rules. These are, some people call them your spelling demons or your high-frequency words. They've been called lots of different things. But to make it active and tactile, we do arm spelling. So since this is advanced phonics, I'll give you one of my high schoolers' words from last week. The word was cordial. Please be cordial to each other. So this was a very tricky one. So do arm spelling, stick your arm out, take your opposite hand.
Usually use that.
Well, at
Your
least
right hand, Emily, do you want to demonstrate lefty?
yeah.
Sorry, Emily's our resident lefty. If your right hand, could you start at the shoulder and go down? If your left hand is looking back and come down. So it's cordial. C-O-R-D-I-A-L. Cordial. So for some of them, and then I give little tricks, like this core dial. They know the word dial. So that helped them remember how to spell it. Sometimes we chunk it. Sometimes we chant it. Sometimes they come up with a little way to separate it. It all depends. We try to make it a little fun. So that's how we tackle the rule breakers, I like to call them. So also depending on our students and the levels and all that, we still use a sound deck. So if they're very low, we'll flip through. Basically, you show them the letter, and then they have to say what the sound that it makes. ED is a fun one because it makes 3 sounds. I don't know what that is in here. This is in my deck. I also have, now that's the Orton Gillingham sound deck. I have an old one from 20 years ago when I started. It's called the initial reading deck and the advanced reading deck. So the initial reading deck, now I put these on index cards and I made them. The initial deck has a picture cue. So if you have a student who is well below level and can't remember what that says, there's a picture cue to help. But most of my high schoolers I use, oh, I hit that one. Okay. I use the advanced one, which I put on blue, but it doesn't have the picture cue anymore. So OW actually makes 2 sounds. So depending on how many we've gone through in class, if we've just done OW says O like snow, I'll just hold this up and I'll say OW says O. If we've done both, we would add the second sound. So sometimes we flip through these. This helps for decoding as well as spelling, and just a different way to think of the sounds. Basically the same thing as that deck, but in a different form. Yes?
So I do something similar, but do you always have them say the letters, or do you just have them say the sounds? I normally just do like the sounds, like O or ow. But do you think it's better to say the letters?
It's just something that I've always done, and I don't remember if it was something I learned in training, but I want them to associate OW, those 2 letters together, say the sound. So I always say OW says O like, well, if it's for the younger kids, I'll say OW says O like snow. The older ones, I'll just say OW says O, OW says ow.
And then we also do like blending with it, and I feel awful. I begged for a blending board, and I forgot it. It's in school. Sorry, Jan. But so we would put, and this is great for the nonsense words. Okay. So this is great for the nonsense words too, because you can have that discussion, okay, and it keeps from the guessing happening, because they have to say the sound. So if you're like up and you are ready to start doing the blending, then you can say, okay, and I only have 4 students maybe in a group at this time, and so each individually would get to blend a word, but you could mix it up how you do it. Be like, okay, let's say the sounds, crid, and you could also add another sensory to it, to a movement with it or something, which we'll talk about. But so if you're ready to start blending, or you could do, if you're working on all the ways to show A, you could put in all the different ways to show A and stuff and blend it, and then you're mixing in all the other sounds that you've learned already, and so there's different
You, the teacher, get to control which letters and patterns show up in your blending board. So if you only want to focus on long vowel sounds for a while, you would put the cards in that focus on that. If you're brave and you trust your students, you do have to be careful. Every now and then swear words show up, or words that sound like swear words. I've also learned for it that have done that. But I sometimes assign a different student every day to run the blending board. And they love it, because then they have to be listening to make sure that their classmates are pronouncing whatever's there correctly. It gives them a little power. They get to be the teacher for a few minutes, and they love telling their classmates when they're wrong. nicely, but they like that power. And then, but you do have to go with the disclaimer, like, if you see as you're getting ready to sort, there's something naughty coming up, get 2 cards instead of 1.
You can tell. So vowel tens, I know it's a hard picture to see, but basically it's colored index cards, and in Orton Gillingham early on they use these for the vowels. So like A says A, E says A, and you would place out the vowel tens. So each kid would have a stack of them, and that would be part of your routine. You can also do it with like the different sounds of ED. So ED says id, ED says d, ED says t, right? So you can do it for different ones. So
what you would do is you would say a word or show a word, and they have to put out the tent matches. So or your short vowel review. If you give them a word, they would have to put out the tent that matches the short vowel in that word. So it's just, again, a review and a practice. 3 sounds of ED is a lot harder than you would think. Do yourself a favor though as a teacher. Make everybody make the same color mean the same thing. So the ED says is always on this color. You know, otherwise you will go crazy and you can see very quickly if they're all the same if somebody has the wrong answer. Ooh. Okay. Talkers, whiners, and others. This I learned somewhere in college, and it just kind of stuck with me. When you get to your vowel pairs, you can break them into 3 categories. The ones that talk, the ones that whine, and then all the other ones that don't follow either rule. So the talkers are the ones that follow the rule. If 2 vowels go walking, the first one does the talking, like A-I, A-Y. The first one talks, the second one is silent. The whiners, when we get to these, my classes love it because I said it's the only time you're allowed to whine in my class. These would be the sounds like, aw, boy, ew. They kind of have a whiny sound. Or otherwise the vowel diagram, the vowel diphthongs. The others would be like EA that says F. Well, it's not a talker, it's not whining, it's an other sound. So when I talk about the talkers and the whiners, you know, our teacher language calls them something else, but to the kids, even the high schoolers, I talk about, well, this is a talker or this is a whiner, and it just kind of cues them into what kind of sound they're going to be. And they like it. They think it's fun to whine in class.
The sound variation book, so I have a background of Word Gillingham, but also phonographics is another program that I use. So some of what I've done is based on that a little bit. But this is a book from my old school that I worked at so we would teach all the sound pictures at one time for this particular curriculum. But I thought this was a really good resource, and actually I'll come back to this too, but you can see right up here. So, for example, if you're teaching O, the long O sound, okay, OW is one of the ways to show O. And you have the 3 circles which says, okay, well, where do you see that sound show up in the word? And oftentimes when I'm doing my pound and tap and on the whiteboards, we would circle. We would look at our list of words and say, okay, so where is AY, for example? Okay, it's often located at the end of the word. All right, so when you're writing and you hear a word and you're like, okay, it has the A sound, but I don't know where it's located, think about it and try the different ways. So this is just another way for them to kind of visually see. So this is a book that we would make for all the different vowel patterns that they would learn, and you could do it for anything, really. So that I thought was a really good resource.
Yeah, Katie decided to pull this little gem out the other week when we were preparing this. And it's like, you've worked with me for how long, and you just are now showing me this? For a lot of my students that I work with, even the older ones, having this in the places, even as we learn them, instead of doing them all at one time, but even as we learn them, to have a little booklet where they can record it, they can color code it and give examples. This is going to be added to my repertoire.
I can't take credit for that. I didn't
No, I
make
know.
that though.
Now that I know about it, I'm stealing it.
That's why a portion of it's
because I think just that other way to visually represent it is super helpful for a lot of my kiddos.
Mm-hmm. And then the next thing, the letter sound chart. So that again is just another way to kind of sort your words, figure out, which version of the sound picture we're going to be using. Okay, I know there's lots of different terms people use for when talking about it and whatnot, but this was just kind of a sorting thing. So when I would introduce a sound, I would lay out all the cards, and I would not give the categories, so they wouldn't have like OAO, OUGH, they would just have the words, and they would have to figure out, the student would have to figure out what the pattern was, and then we would create our own little index cards or sticky notes with, okay, so these words, the way that they're showing the O sound is plain O. okay, now this word is using OW, and we would sort them, and then this would be kind of a tracking sheet to kind of go with that.
For those of you that use stations or centers, this could be a great thing to do. Have a recording sheet once you've taught them how to use it. Give them a stack of index cards with words and let them sort, either open or closed sort. I like it also for, again, kind of like the sound variation book to kind of go along with that. Just another place to record and write down a pattern and some words that go with it in a different way, in a different format, a different graphic organizer. Again, repetition. I'm stealing that one too.
And then the word analysis is great because I think it ties right in with the pound and tap and the whiteboards and things like that. So it's
coming in boxes for those that know.
Yep. So it's got the boxes, and then you can just kind of write the words over here. So boat, right? And then you can have the different ways to show.
This is something I'm actually stealing this one too. Going to maybe cycle into some of our daily practice. Maybe laminate the cards so I'm not wasting paper. But just copying that, and then as we practice, instead of, in addition to the pound and tap, having them write that out in that way, so again, they can visually see the different combinations. I like to change it up. I mean, I love our routine, but I also know that you got to change it up every now and then so they don't get too bored. And I think that's going to be my next little gem. And
again, I know that these words, bow, blow, toe, those are, shorter words, but again, I go back to the presentation I heard the Millersville student do, and she was saying what a good sheet to, just to put a larger word on a multi-syllabic word to try and figure out which sound, you're going to, the sounds that you're going to use to spell the word. Just another resource. Okay. Blending and segmenting with a box of objects. So where I used to teach, they had a whole container, and I don't know if anyone's ever done this, but it was like a plastic container with drawers, and every drawer was a different sound. So you would have like the O sound, A sound, long A, whatever, like for everything. And in each drawer were objects that had those sounds in their word. And literally, so I did a lot of individual tutoring and things like that, but you could do this with a large class. Also, you would take a box of objects, and I have a bag today because this was me doing this. So we're doing the long E sound, okay? So, and you would have your box of objects, and so I might say, okay, Sharpie, and I might chunk it, like Sharpie, and then we might do the sounds and pound and tap for the sounds. And then maybe you close your eyes and pick an object out of the bag and do it. So I have Sharpie to represent IE, and I have 3. Okay, so we're using tangible objects, and obviously this is what I had around my apartment. But if you knew your student and they like soccer or something, you could totally relate it all to that student or a group of students or anything like that. An event happening in the world, whatever. So this is just another example. This is what I call box of objects, and you can blend in segments. So 3, so 3, and then you could just do so many different things with it. And if you're doing multi-syllabic words, you would just put in a bunch of objects that are multi-chunk words or whatnot. Sorry, I go back and forth on the Orton Gillingham and photographics language, so I apologize. Go ahead.
I have seen, it's been a while, but the Lakeshore Learning Catalog often has these for like your early learners with the objects. Same idea, but at a higher level. It's been a while since I've checked what their offerings are, but I know before they've sold objects, I mostly think of it as like beginning and ending sound sorts. But same idea, higher level with vowel sounds. Gosh, if you're really good at finding objects, you could maybe even go with prefixes and suffixes or different things like that.
Just relating your words and your patterns to tangible objects.
You could have students come up with images, do an image search for things that follow that, so they might have to brainstorm a list of words that follow this and then create their own box of objects, even if it's pictures, and then share.
And I don't know if this is on the next thing, I can't remember. And I'm gonna say it because it relates to that. So relating to like the key T3 elderberry Sharpie, I might then have the students write a rhyme or a story or something that had those words in it that had the different patterns represented, and then that would be like their mnemonic to like remember it or whatever, you know, because that's just another way for some students that might work. So they might have to come up with a cute little story about that, and we're going to get more into. Okay, so active and creative ways to practice.
Okay, so again, some of this is a little repetitive as we did before, but it still works with the older kids. Now, I'm going out of order. Word ladders is the fourth X down. Tim Risser made these wonderful books that I love to use. They do go up to grades 4 through 6. Beyond that, you might have to make your own if you have kids that are working at a level above that. But really on the inside, for those of you that aren't familiar, they're literally ladders in his book. You start with a word at the bottom. This one says sew, as in sewing. Then it'll say, what stores do with the things in them? Take away the last letter and add 2. And so you would have to figure out what that means. So this one blends a little bit more vocabulary, not just straight letters and letter sound correspondence. And by the time you get to the top, usually whatever the bottom word is, a lot of times the top word is an opposite to the bottom. And it gives you great discussion about words.
Multiple meaning and stuff.
Multiple meaning. I tend to use that more in a one-on-one or a smaller group setting.
Could be like a center or something too.
It could be. I don't do those because my classes are small. But in my classroom, I do use making words. The book that I'm using is not here because I put it somewhere safe and I couldn't find it before I left. But I do have making big words and making more words. Now I did make the letter cards that they suggested, and what I did is I put my vowels on red, my consonants on white, and Y, I don't know why not W, but they say Y on pink. So every kid has a box with at least 2 of every consonant and at least 2 of every vowel. So I will write the letters that they need on the board, say, okay, go get your box and take out these letters. So then it makes them start to think. It's not just the dictation that we do in our lesson. So if we have, let me just pick a random lesson here. So let's say they had the word race showing, R-A-C-E. I'll say, okay, well that was better. Okay, it starts with the word air. So I would say take 3 letters and spell the word air. So if they're thinking, okay, maybe incorrectly, A-R-E. Oh, well, does that look right? So they have to work with the letters that they're given. So sometimes it challenges them to think, oh, I thought I spelled it this way. But then they're like, oh, I don't have that letter. So they have to think, well, what are my other options? So it kind of, in a way, forces them to use what they know. So if they have air, add 1 letter and make it say hair. So then they have to think where they hear that new sound. Then it changes to the other hair. Hair is in the rabbit. So again, multi-meaning words. And then you go on and on. And then the last word, which uses all the letters, I always view it as a challenge word. Say, okay, now you have the challenge. You have to use all the letters to make a word, a real word. You have to use all the letters. So now sometimes we're getting into different syllables, syllable types. You know, where do you find the patterns of those words? So I just give it a challenge. If it's a really tough one, every now and then I'll throw them a bone and give them a hint, like, oh, the first letter is H. So then they all scramble, then they rearrange. And I usually make it fun and give like a little prize of some sort, like one of our school store dollars, something like that. So they're a little more invested. So I don't do this necessarily every day or every week, but if I know that there's a lesson in there that practices some of the things we've done for a while, we'll pull it out, and it's just another way of that practical application, a little different, shake things up.
Do you find those follow your scope and sequence because you kind of struggle with them?
Yeah, that's
No, they
my
don't.
thing.
I do this. Let me see. Oh, that has a lot of patterns we use. We're going to do this lesson today, so I do have to kind of look through. If there's a pattern in it where most of it works, but there's a couple words that don't, I'll just skip those words and move on. But yeah, no, they don't follow our sequence, but I can usually find one. And that's part of it. Yeah. So word wheels, just like you would think of in elementary, you can think about them getting blends and digraphs, ending blends and digraphs. You can have your vowel pairs, and you can make your word wheels or your strips to practice the higher level concepts as well. I do have a lot of students who really like the hands-on stuff, so practicing reading words or practicing writing words or making their own would be a big hit. The boggle board, again, if you were in the last session, it's the same picture because it's the same board. But just like the classic game Boggle, only this time you put the letters up. Mine's made out of poster board and Velcro letters. There's Velcro on the back of the letters. I would put it up for like 2 weeks or so. There would be a recording sheet where they can write down their words. And I would usually make it a little challenge where, again, whoever came up with the most words at the end of the time, or if you could find more than so many words, I would give them a little prize. But it's not something I leave up all the time in my room because it does grow old really quick. And I don't usually have a lot of downtime in my classroom, so not a ton of time to work on it. Are you bingo?
Your bingo.
I'm bingo. Okay, bingo. Bingo, there's a lot of resources through Scholastic and other places where you can get or make your own bingo boards that have, even if you did A, A-E, A-I, A-Y, if you did your 4 sounds of A, then you read words, they'd have to figure out which spelling pattern that is, put their marker on. When they get bingo, they get bingo. And again, you could do it with more than just vowel pairs. You could do it with pretty much any pattern that you have in more than 1 or 2 patterns. Or you could do a whole bunch of long vowel sounds together. At the end of next week, my high school, my middle school group will have done E-E, E-A, A-I, A-Y, O-E, and O-A. So we could play bingo with all of those combinations. They could fill their board. I could say a word and they'd have to mark their board. Yeah, and we could play bingo as a way to review.
All right, so writing stories, that's kind of what I was talking about. So using whatever, patterns you're working on and kind of incorporating them into some writing, whether it be, a saying to just help students remember. So if we're focusing on A-I and A-Y, okay, let's think of something that relates to you, but has those patterns within the words, and then make it relate to you. So write a story or poem or a saying or something like that. Ooh City is something I did. So I, again, worked with a lot of students with dyslexia, and so we created out of like cardboard recycled materials, we made an ooh city, and everything in our ooh city had the ooh sound in it. So there was a shoe store and a pool and new. I don't remember exactly everything that was in it, but everything, and they built it and they labeled it and then they presented it. And I really do think it stuck with them more. That shoe is S-H-O-E, as opposed to learning it just by kind of writing it on a worksheet. So that's Ooh City. Haunted Hollows was something I did, 2 years ago?
It was really cool.
I go kind of extreme on my ideas sometimes.
You just have big ideas.
I do, yeah. And so we kind of went all out, so we were learning the O sound, and it was around Halloween, so we just decorated the whole classroom as kind of a town called the Haunted Hollows, and they were characters. I mean, the kids.
Joe.
Thank you. I don't know. Joe, and then there were ghosts, and there was a whole story that went along with it, and then other classes came in and toured our Haunted Hollows, and the kids learned the different ways to show the O
It
sound.
was really neat. There was definitely a path. They had arrows on the carpet.
Arrows, yep.
To show you your path, and you would go
There
to
was a donut shop.
and that person would tell their story about that, and then you move to the next station. And we tried to find pictures of it, but we
It's
found
near the ocean. I didn't take enough pictures.
yeah,
of it.
we found that we just did it. We didn't take pictures.
But again, things that they will remember.
We can still talk about it. Hey, do you remember when we did Haunted Hollywood at Halloween?
I don't have them.
No, I do know.
Okay, and so my 3D printing thing, and I think okay, so here's some examples, literally just last week, because I was teaching my students, and I have students from age 10 to 15, I think, in this class, and we were working on CVC, so short vowel CVC words turned into long vowel with the silent E. Kind of boring. So I made it more exciting. And I said, I want you to do a project and I want you to show me your understanding of this. And like I said, I am fortunate enough to be able to do this. I realize that it's not always the case, but I'm very lucky.
And we're also a little spoiled. We have a 3D printing lab
Yeah,
with 3D printers. So
So-
we try to use that when we can.
So I had 3 different groups of students do 3 different, very different projects to represent their understanding. So the one, we can show this one. So this is Ralph the rat, who had a slow heart rate, and he was very fat, which led to an awful fate. So they had to use, I gave them, obviously after teaching pound and tap, doing the whiteboards, doing the sand trays, all that, I gave them a list of pairs of words that showed the relationship. They had to choose at least 10, and then, right, and then they could do a project to do it. So, and then they created a poem. So the fat rat Ralph had a slow heart rate because of all the cheese he ate. His fate was a big mistake, poor fat rat. He would spin in the wind with a watery spine. He would pin a pine to his great white side. So mad he made a cheesecake. He bit a bite in the fat, bright plum cake. But you get the idea. So that was one of the choices, and then they created Ralph the rat on the 3D printer. They're all very excited I was taking their things here. And then the other one, another group, I'll do this first, chose to create a book because that was their direction, and they were able to learn so many more skills while doing this as well. So they chose their 10 words and they created a book. And it was actually really interesting. We came up into a discussion of multiple meaning because they got to the word pale, and they had done they did pal, and then they did pale, P-A-L-E, and we had the discussion, and their sentence didn't go with, it was pale like a shovel and pail, and so we had the discussion, and we were like, okay, well, that is a way to show pale. You are using, a sound picture that I would like you to use. However, this is the spelling of pale, the one you're thinking of, and so it just led to all these other discussions. So this was another way, and this particular student is very interested in art, and they did a great job working together on that. And then yeah, I think this is called the E-Universe. I'm not really sure. So this is another group. They came up with this completely on their own, and I was amazed. And they so they decided that the E was going to be the sun. I think that's part of the planet. I'm not sure. The E was going to be the sun, and then the planets would rotate around the sun, and as they rotated, they changed to the long vowel. So, for example, they 3D printed like Rob and Robe. So as Rob would go around, it would grab the E and it would turn into Robe and make it like the long vowel. So that was their understanding. And I even saw one of our students made it. So he created the Earth. This killed me. I didn't know what he was doing. And then he put this pipe cleaner. It's the moon is orbiting.
I wonder what that was.
It's adorable. So again, just another smorgasbord.
Creative way to use the strengths.
Yes.
To use it.
And this is again what we were talking about with also just relating back to dyslexia and everything, and finding their strengths and making sure that we point out other things that the students can do, because this all happened in my reading and writing class. And look at how many other things they were able to focus on. And they want to come to school because they want to make a rack on the 3D printer. But they're really learning reading. Other things I do, so Legos. So this one's actually built from a tutor student last year. So we were working on syllables, multisyllabic words, and it's more like a game. So we came in and I was like, okay, pick a word, and for every syllable you add on a Lego. And I would do this with, you could make towers and with cups and whatever. Like you can do it in so many different ways. Blocks, pipe cleaners with beads. I actually have a, I don't know if this sound's gonna work.
Equation.
So you can see that's actually like a little one of those squishy things I got at the dollar store. It's like a fidget, like squishy thing with separate balls that for the sounds. Again, visualizing the sounds. And you know, and older kids will do these things. This one is the pipe cleaners.
Commemoration.
Again, visually seeing the, and just different ways, you know, I'm not asking you to do dots on the page or whatever. Jumping on the placemats. Again, if you have a physical kid who's athletic and wants to get up and moving, they're not going to care. We have teachers at the school that jump down the stairs, don't they?
They use the stairs.
She uses the stairs, and they just
They
go and
go
jump down the stairs to just
So-
get you, you know.
Math facts.
Okay, you can do that. Yeah,
So, if you're in the last session, the syllable division animals are making an appearance. I hope my mic works.
2 minutes. Maybe 6 minutes.
I don't know, right. Oh, okay, it did work. So, again, a colleague of mine, when I first started, handed me this as a pencil sketch drawing. This is a way to learn your syllable division rules. Katie, hold on.
Okay, sorry.
Rabbit is the VCCB rule. So I have a picture, the pattern, and then an explanation. The cool thing is every animal follows the syllable division pattern. So we have rabbit, I'll go really fast. Hamster is like a rabbit, but there's a blend or a digraph that can't be separated. Zebra words, unless you're from Africa, and then it says zebra, and this doesn't work. But zebra, you divide before the two consonants because they can't be separated. Okay, go ahead. Tiger words, so when you have the BCB pattern, you have one of two ways to divide it. The tiger way is the first way to try. It makes the first syllable open. The camel way makes the first syllable closed. So if the tiger way didn't work, you try the camel way. Lion is when you have two vowels together, but they're not a pair, so you can divide between them. And the last one are the eagle words, which are your consonant LE final syllable endings. If anybody wants them and you weren't here for the first session or it doesn't work, you can email me and I can send them to you. And then spot and dot. Gordon Dillingham in a lot of programs ask you to put V's under the vowels and C's under the consonants. I find that visually a mess. It messes up a lot of my students. So I tell them to spot and dot the vowels. So they literally put little dots under the vowels. You can still do the bridge if you want, but then you see how many letters are between your two vowels, and then that tells you which animal way to divide. Okay. Really fast, a lot of the stuff to be done with prefixes and suffixes. Of course, your ever popular Quizlet. I'm going to skip ahead. Boggle, the Boggle board, you could do with prefixes, suffixes, and root words. Again, along with the word wheels. There's so many things out there for Greek and Latin roots that you could do as well. A lot of these hands-on activities you can do with them as well.
So for spelling, we don't give lists to memorize. So we do a practice Monday through Thursday with the sand tray, pound and tap, whiteboard sequence that we kind of showed you. And then on Friday, we do have like a mini sort of quiz or assessment, but it's more paper trail so that we can show the progression of our students as they learn the different sounds. And then they're expected to internalize the rules and work on applying the patterns, which we then bring up in weeks to come with the review of the sound cards and things like that. And the exception is the red words, so like these sound times. Some of our favorite resources, if you haven't checked out the Florida Center for Reading Research website, it's amazing.
They have games.
Printables, all sorts, oh, it's so great. Mega words, recipe for reading.
Which we apparently like Mega Words so much, we put it on there twice.
It's on there twice. How to teach spelling, word letters, and making words.
Just How to Teach Spelling is a companion that we use to go with our recipe for reading, our sequence. It has other rules, it has more complex things. It has like the different shuns, different ways to spell shun. So it has some more advanced things in it beyond recipe for reading. So when we kind of maxed out recipe for reading, I switched to that. They also have fun little sayings. One of our teachers, and I think she got it out of that, for all the aw sounds, she had a little phrase that she taught them, like the farmer's potty not see water.
Yeah.
So it was just a different way to help. I forget the rest of it, but it was just a way for them to remember words that have all of those patterns. And some of that's in that. Phew. Okay.
2 minutes. Questions?
That was so fast.
On the bottom page, there was 2 things that we skipped over. One was 4 corners, and I forget what the other one was.
Okay, so 4 corners.
The push lights.
Yeah.
Is it push lights like?
It's a little, yeah. So
Oh,
just
for
again,
segmenting.
you
Yeah.
can do that.
I figured that, but then 4 corners, you use that in what way?
4 corners.
You put the spellings in the corners and you
So
say
if I
word
did
and
like
you have to go.
E-E-E-A-E-E, I could say a word and it'd have to
I
go.
was inferencing that so far.
It's exactly what it was. Again, all our resources are up here, even from the last session, so if you wanted to look, if you want to try to stand, if you want to look at any books, you're welcome to. If you want to ask us more questions, we just don't want to have to pass. Thanks, all.
Thank you so much.